Although the Roman Empire fell over 1500 years ago, it still has a marked impact on our understanding of history and Western culture. Roman society is still a source of fascination to many, but how much influence did the Romans really have on modern society? While the Romans are credited with inventing many advancements that they had actually taken from previous cultures, they definitely improved on and spread many technological and social advancements. In this video, we'll take a look at 7 inventions that were popularized by the Romans. Number 1. Concrete. Although the Romans may not have been the first to use concrete, they were the first to make widespread use of it. Different forms of concrete have been used in ancient Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and China. But the Romans used their mix of concrete in nearly all of their construction projects. Roman concrete was a mix of volcanic ash, lime, and seawater, which gave the concrete the extraordinary properties of getting harder over time. This feature made it particularly useful in building seawalls and bridges, as Roman concrete becomes stronger with exposure to seawater, unlike modern concrete, which will erode. This continued hardening is because the water reacts to the Italian volcanic ash, called pozzolana, meaning that Roman concrete is able to heal itself. You may be thinking, if Roman concrete was that good, why don't we use it today? Well, it's because of the speed and scale of modern buildings. Although Roman concrete gets harder with time, freshly made Roman concrete would not have the compressive strength to support modern structures. Number 2. Aqueducts. Like the concrete, systems for siphoning water were already in use in Persia, India, Egypt, and the Middle East. These systems used tunnels that were tapped into hillsides to bring water to the plains below. The Assyrians used a system similar to the Romans that brought fresh water to Nineveh, but it remains a fact that the Roman aqueducts were a major achievement in engineering. From 312 BCE to 226 CE, 11 aqueducts were constructed to bring water to Rome. The longest aqueduct brought fresh water from 57 miles away, and some of the original aqueducts, like the Aqua Virgine, built in 19 BCE, are still used today, although they have undergone several restorations. Despite the common image of stone-arched aqueducts crossing valleys, the majority of Rome's aqueduct system was underground, consisting of terracotta and stone pipes. Other materials used in this underground system were wood, leather, lead, and bronze. The water flowing into Rome was powered by gravity alone, and Rome's famous fountains and baths were all supplied by water from the aqueducts. Unlike today, the water was free-flowing and not stored, with the excess being used to flush out the city's sewers. Roman aqueducts spread throughout the empire, and they can still be seen throughout Italy, Greece, France, Spain, Britain, North Africa, and Asia Minor. Number 3. Central heating. While the first recorded use of underfloor heating was in King Arzawa's palace in 1300 BCE, the Roman hypocaust system improved and expanded on this idea. When constructing a building, a space was left underneath the floor that allowed hot air from a furnace below to heat the room above. A basement hypocaust was constructed of tiles laid in a bed of concrete, with vertical load-bearing shafts to support the internal space. A concrete or tile floor was then laid on top, which was finished by a marble or mosaic tessera floor. The system was not just for underfloor heating, it was also used to heat rooms throughout the walls. The system usually consisted of a vertical flue in the wall through which the smoke and gases could escape, and the warm air could pass through, heating the rooms. The flues were made up of hollow tiles that were set close together and ran through the walls of the home. If more heat was needed, more flues were added. Roman central heating was not available to everyone. It was used in public bathhouses to create warm and hot rooms, as well as in private homes of wealthy Romans living in the northern provinces. These hypocausts can also still be seen in Roman villas and house foundations in Britain and Germany. Number 4. Highways. Humans have always used paths. Even if it's created simply from repeated use, following a path is usually quicker and safer than not. Animals also use the same paths, safely leading them to food and water sources. As human transport evolved, paths widened and expanded. But it was the Romans who were one of the first to see the benefit of well-maintained highways. As Rome's expansion and rule were founded on military domination, the primary reason that Rome began to build its vast road network was for military use. The Roman army was made up of legions, each with around 4,200 to 5,000 infantry, plus an average of 300 cavalrymen. Alongside the military ranks, they had servants, equipment, and supplies, meaning that traveling long distances would be difficult and slow when using dirt tracks alone. The first substantial Roman road was started in 312 BCE by Appius Claudius Caecus and was called the Via Appia, Appian Way. It ran from Rome to Tarentum, spanning 162 miles, and was eventually expanded by a further 218 miles to Brundisium on the Adriatic coast, making it the longest Roman road in existence. By the 2nd century BCE, 4 other roads radiated from Rome. The Roman roads were built relatively straight, with solid foundations and cambered surfaces that allowed surface water to drain off, much like our modern roads. Sections of the roads were maintained by the local authorities, and Roman roads have been built in Britain, France, Spain, North Africa, Egypt, and the Middle East. When the Roman Empire collapsed, the roads began to be neglected. However, they were still used throughout Europe well into the Middle Ages, and sections of them still survive today, putting many modern road builders to shame. Number 5. Apartment buildings. As the population of Rome soared, the city needed to find practical and cheap housing solutions for its many citizens. The answer that they came up with was insula, or island in Latin. These insulae were constructed of wood frames and brick, which they then covered in concrete. They were usually 5 or more stories high and contained multiple dwellings, much like apartment buildings today. They had an inner court to let in light, and the residences were reached by means of an internal staircase. While the wealthier Romans lived in relatively spacious townhouses called domus, everyone else had to settle for a cheap apartment if they wanted to live in the big city. Unlike in many modern apartment buildings where the top floor holds the most expensive and luxurious dwellings, it was much more desirable to be at ground level. Not only were the upper floors usually more cramped and dimly lit, but water could only be pumped to the lower level apartments, with those on the upper floors having to use public water facilities. The insulae were also notoriously dangerous, often catching fire or falling down, so living closer to the exit was preferable. The insulae were built so closely together that it was said you could shake hands with someone in a neighboring building through the windows, and traversing the narrow alleyways below came with the risk of having a chamber pot dumped on you due to the lack of indoor plumbing. Poorer Roman citizens rarely ate at home, as they didn't have the facilities. But if they couldn't afford to eat out, they had to use braziers in their cramped apartments, contributing to the risk of burning the whole building down. Number 6. Social welfare. During the 1st century CE, the population of Rome surged. Dispossessed citizens who would have once been given new lands in colonized countries now had to move to Rome to seek new lives. The number of enslaved people and freed men in Rome also increased, leading to a population boom. As most of the new arrivals were poor, this led to social unrest, widespread poverty, and a food crisis. Roman leaders knew that in order to run an economically successful society, people needed to be fed. By the 2nd century, many farmers in Italy had abandoned growing grain in favor of keeping cattle and producing grapes and olives, which were more economically viable. Yet Rome's poorest citizens relied on grain to survive. Grain deliveries from the Roman-controlled areas in Sicily, Sardinia, and Africa were volatile due to inconsistent crop yields and the risks of importing via ships. The unpredictability of imported grain meant the price of grain was unstable and often rose dramatically. In 123 BCE, Gaius Gracchus passed a law that all citizens who lived in the capital could buy a quantity of grain at a fixed price every month. Basically, anyone willing to wait in line could buy grain at around half the usual cost, with the surplus cost made up by the tax levied on wealthier citizens. The issue of low-priced grain was so popular that many politicians ran successful campaigns using grain price as a central policy. In 59 BCE, populist politician Clodius Pulcher promised to distribute portions of free wheat, winning him the tribune. Unfortunately, the burden of free wheat for all was too great for the state to support, and Julius Caesar reduced the number of people entitled to the dole. The number was reduced again by Augustus. Nevertheless, the custom of distributing free food became a staple of Roman city life, and free bread was often distributed at organized games, which citizens were also able to attend for free. Roman Emperor Septimus Severus distributed free bread, grain, and olive oil amongst commoners, and Aurelian swapped subsidized grain to sell bread, salt, pork, and wine at a reduced rate. Number 7. Regular news updates. In 59 BCE, Julius Caesar began the distribution of Acta Diurna, or events of the day. Although not technically a newspaper, as it was transcribed onto a stone slab or metal, the Acta Diurna kept citizens up to date with daily events. The slab would be placed in a public square and detail information such as results of gladiatorial matches, chariot races, military news, court trials, the Senate's debates, people's assemblies, and of course, births, deaths, and marriages. After Caesar's death, Emperor Augustus saw that the Acta Diurna would be useful for extolling government propaganda and curbing gossip. He used the daily updates to describe the empire's successful battles and conquests, but left out details of Senate discussions. For nearly 400 years, Romans were kept up to date with the latest news from across the empire. Sadly, no copies of the Acta Diurna survive today, but we do have descriptions of the type of news stories included. Pliny the Elder recorded one story that he had read about a dog's fidelity to its master, and another about the conflict between two families who were attending a funeral. Cassius Dio recounted the story of an architect who saved a portico from falling down, noting that Emperor Tiberius would not allow the architect's name to be published out of jealousy of the incredible feat. Despite not being printed on paper, historians cite the Acta Diurna as the predecessor of modern newspapers and as the first reliable example of journalism in history. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about ancient Rome, check out our book, History of Rome, a captivating guide to Roman history, starting from the legend of Romulus and Remus through the Roman Republic, Byzantium, medieval period, and Renaissance to modern history. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.